Welcome back to this quadricentennial anniversary series of the Pilgrim's Journey, where we recount their milestones 400 years ago to the day. September 6th, 1620 is the day the Mayflower finally embarked on the voyage that would finally take them successfully to America. On the last installment of this series, they made their first attempt, but had to return when their ship the Speedwell had sprung a leak. They returned to England to the port of Dartmouth, and after repairs they departed again. However, only about 100 leagues beyond Cornwall, the Speedwell sprung a leak yet again, and they had to return back to England to the port of Plymouth. Robert Cushman, the chief agent representing the Pilgrims to London, reported these words in a letter written at the time.
"Our pinnace will not cease leaking, else I think we had been halfway to Virginia. Our voyage hither hath been as full of crosses as ourselves have been of crookedness. We put in here to trim her, and I think as others also, if we had stayed at sea but 3 or 4 more hours, she would have sunk right down. Friend, if ever we make a plantation, God works a miracle."
Some of them placed blame for the leak on the use of too large a mast, which strained the hull. However, the Pilgrim William Bradford believed that the leak was caused by intentional sabotage on the part of the crew, who feared starvation and other dangers on the way to America, and used this deceit as an excuse to return home. Abandoning the goal of repairing the Speedwell, they put her up for auction and left her behind. 11 passengers from the Speedwell boarded the Mayflower. The remaining 20 Speedwell passengers could not fit, so a portion of the Pilgrims had to stay behind and return to Holland in order to wait and hope for a future voyage. Now, with a passenger count of 102, the Mayflower was packed far beyond what was normal for a ship its size, especially given that she was not designed as a passenger vessel, but made for freight. Before this voyage, the Mayflower had primarily been employed on the short journey between England and Bordeaux, carrying wine and cloth. Now that they had set sail, the Pilgrims were under the authority of Captain Christopher Jones, who, despite being a seasoned navigator, had never made the voyage to the New World before. He led a crew of around 30 men who had no intention of settling in America. They were there to do their job, to get back home to England as quickly as they could. During this journey, the Pilgrim members of the Ancient Brethren called themselves the Saints, and they collectively called the merchant adventurers and crew members the Strangers to differentiate themselves. However, these strangers quickly became acquainted with the Saints in the cramped conditions of the ship where there was next to no privacy. The irreverent behavior of the sailors was a shock to the piety-minded sensibilities of the Pilgrims, but they were now together for the long haul and would have to become accustomed to each other. One last time, they gazed back at Mother England until disappearing past the horizon. The vast majority of them would never set their eyes upon their homeland again. This was the first day of a long voyage across the ocean, made longer by the northern route chosen to avoid French pirates and the Spanish Navy. Though safer from the dangers of other people, this route was more prone to natural hazards, including storms and cold. The other disadvantage of this route is the direction of the prevailing winds called the westerlies, which blow from west to east, the opposite direction of the Mayflower. In contrast, the southern route dominated by the Spanish was benefited by the easterlies, also known as the trade winds, which quickened sailing to the Americas. Because of these winds, which the Mayflower was not well aerodynamically designed to cut through, she averaged a speed of less than 3 miles an hour. Provisions had to be strictly rationed to mitigate the risks of such a long and slow journey, which could be unexpectedly made longer and slower by the unpredictable winds. And already, the ship stunk. This would not be an easy cruise. Despite the setbacks and hardships ahead, the Pilgrims stood strong in faith that God would bless their passage, like He led the Israelites safely through the Red Sea for deliverance from Pharaoh's chase on their way to the Promised Land. They interpreted every event that befell them as a symbolic lesson from God and an opportunity for spiritual growth and further reformation. Many challenges will confront the Mayflower passengers on this voyage, including a birth, a death, and a near sinking mid-ocean. We'll discuss these in the next installment of this series as we follow the journey of the Pilgrims aboard the Mayflower. So subscribe and let's join them on a pilgrimage of our own.